Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Managing Partners Podcast, special edition, what we call Tactical Tuesdays. And today I have Kayla Davis joining me on the show. Kayla's been with me for 3+ years, and she's an absolute content genius, especially when it comes to legal content in the SEO realm. So excited for her to share with us today. Kayla, welcome to the show.
Yes, Kevin, thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure working at Array Digital and being able to build up this content department. I work very closely with Kevin because he's always able to tell lawyers around America about the great things we're doing here at Array Digital. So just a little bit about me, and then I'll kind of talk about the department at large. I came here just really looking for an opportunity to allow lawyers to have their stories told. A lot of times when you look at attorney marketing, you don't really see something that touches you in a way where you're like, I need to go with that attorney immediately. A lot of times it feels very stunted, some of the language, or too aggressive. You can see this many times with maybe personal injury attorneys who are great. I love personal injury attorneys, but sometimes the messaging that they use can be super intense and focus a lot on aggressive action or advocacy, which is great, but there does need to be that element of empathy when people are severely hurt and being able to educate them and teach them about what they need to do in the moment as well as throughout their case. And so at Array Digital, we were able to sit down and focus on how we can make our larger SEO team a lot more comprehensive. And that's where the content team came about. We were able to really sit down with our attorneys and create an overall program that really lives within SEO and help them to craft their narratives and build out stories that are for the long term going to benefit their brand. A lot of agencies don't have that. A lot of agencies say, all right, we're just going to create content, use AI to draft it out or ship it overseas and put it on the site and not have any oversight. And then at Array Digital, what we do is when we write content, we always do that in collaboration with the attorney. We workshop it with the attorney. We send it to them for review and edits before it gets published. So nothing that we do is in a vacuum. Everything gets seen by the attorney. And that's the broader goal of Array Digital, is to have a philosophy where things are done with our clients, not without them. So happy to talk about that today. Really, really excited. There's a lot to talk about with content, especially some things we might get into later on, like AI content and what is the impact of that? How much content should you write, etc. So super excited. Thank you for having me, Kevin.
Yeah, there's some hot topics there. So AI is obviously hot right now. So, but yeah, Kayla, I appreciate that and kind words. We love having you here, of course, and things you've done are amazing. But for the attorneys out there listening, SEO, obviously important. Hopefully you're focused on it. But, there's kind of what Kayla touched on there real quick. One, you want to rank and get people to find your website and become a client, right? That's, when you think SEO, it's how do we work the system? How do we game it? How do we make sure that we're showing up? And so many people are missing the other piece of it, which is, for one, there's rules and that you have to follow with Google. And honestly, there's no tricking it. It's being done by the book, right? So it's no longer tricking Google. So it's quality and uniqueness and your voice and your brand. And there's so many things at play here that are not being taken care of most of the time when I see websites. And so right. I talked to an attorney that cares deeply about their brand, and we're different, and we're this, and you read their content, and it's just terrible. Like this list of stuff, it's AI generated, or it's just SEO content, if you will. And if people are reading that, it's not carrying their brand. It's not their voice. It's not what they would want to have their client read if they actually sat down and looked at it. And so when you kind of get in those conversations, they're like, oh, I didn't think about that. I didn't think about this. We're just trying to show up at the top. And so if you were to show up at the top, that's one piece of the battle. But what if you do, and then they go to that page and they actually read it? Are they going to want to hire your firm? How many people just bounce off and go away? So you can't just be number one and not provide a good experience to the potential client. And so that's kind of what we're talking about today is, doing everything right and thinking about all those things. And we can't do that without talking to the attorney. We can't do that without sitting down with you and understanding your business and your geographic location and all that stuff. So it's not easy, but it's just the way it's got to be. And so Kayla's done just a great job building a program that does that and has lots of different ways we can do it with different attorneys. So then we'll get into all that stuff. If you're an attorney, maybe you write, maybe you don't write and never will. Maybe you have staff that can write for you. Maybe you want to outsource it, have an agency do it completely. And that's the cool thing about, program that we've built here is there's options and there's different ways that we can accomplish this. So I'm excited to get into that. So Kayla, I appreciate that.
Yes, I am as well. And some more things to talk about, as you mentioned, Kevin, that just reminded me. Within writing content and doing that for, I don't want to say the full purposes of SEO, it is to be helpful. But when you're balancing that line of writing content that needs to be found by Google and also writing content that resonates with potential clients, you really have to make sure that you understand front to back everything that Google is looking for within content. So the helpful content update rolled out last year, at the end of Q3, finished rolling out September last year. And it really focused on making sure that anything that is coming from an expert, even though lawyers can't call themselves that in their content, but anything that is supposedly coming from an expert demonstrates that level of trustworthiness and authority on the website. And that is such a critical component of content that I speak with lawyers all the time about. And as you mentioned, Kevin, you can look at some of these websites that have content for attorneys, and it's missing a lot of these elements that Google needs, that your potential clients need, and that will really speak to your brand. So excited to get into that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the funny thing is Google is aligned with that, right? So what the client needs, Google wants you to have. So, that makes sense, right? And so Google wants people to keep using Google. If your websites, all the websites out there have terrible content, unuseful content, or just, list of legal terms and things like glossaries, and people will leave Google because they're like, you know what, this is not what I want. I consistently can't find the right answers, and it's all this spammy websites that are trying to sell me something. And then people start to leave and go to other browser systems, right? So Google has to continue to innovate and lock this stuff down. So please Google, and you'll be rewarded for it. Another thing you mentioned, not specifically, but ABA. So following the rules of ABA, you said a lawyer can't say they're an expert or the best.
Right.
So we also have to work in their ABA law rules. And there's a whole set of rules that you have to follow so that you don't get pinged by the Bar Association. So it's a lot of things happening there, but how do you know if your content follows those rules, right? And is that part of your strategy to make sure that QA is done, that quality assurance? So, yeah, a lot of things. A lot
of times
there.
It's not right.
I wouldn't want to have your job, Kayla. I don't know.
It's definitely the most rewarding part is being able to chat with my clients. Like I met with a client today who's just fantastic. And he was talking about how we did a content sprint for him last year. And ever since those pages were published, he's just been getting nonstop calls for this new service that he just launched last year, a new practice area rather, that he really hadn't explored prior. And being able to do a content sprint, which is essentially a content project, we knock out tons of pieces in a short amount of time and publish them. Being able to do that, put that on his site, and then just let it bake and let Google understand and recognize the new content allowed him to get so much business in a short amount of time. And so even though it can be difficult to navigate not only the American Bar Association rules of professional conduct, but all of the subsequent states' rules of professional conduct, because you have the ABA and then every state has their own, that can be difficult to navigate. But what we always do is we make sure to write content according to the strictest standards. So some states are a little bit more lenient than others, but overall, every piece of content that we write is per the ABA, as well as when I've worked with lawyers in other states, there's been certain things that you wouldn't even think of lawyers shouldn't say, but it's a gray area. So we make sure not to do that for any of our clients, just to make sure that they are all 100% safe, regardless of what state that they're in. So it can definitely be tricky to navigate, but in our department, we've gotten it down. And it's something that if you are not working with a legal content agency or legal SEO agency specifically, it's something that I always see missed. I'll go on attorneys' websites and they'll have expert all over it, or they'll say they can ensure results, or they guarantee this, guarantee that, or that they're the best attorney in their state. You can't say that. And it's risking your reputation. It's risking getting a bar hit. So we always put that at the forefront.
No, for sure. And, I don't know how many agencies actually follow that or have a process for it or can handle the expense that may come with having to do that. So, right. I guess we're getting at is everything we do here, it's got to be done by the book, cross our T's and dot our I's. And it's a lot, but it's just the way we're going to do things. For anyone listening, one of the tips I will say, of course, with Kayla, we want them to know what we do here, but we also want to make sure we give them as many tips and free information as possible if they're listening. Content sprints. So pro tip, whether you're writing yourself, maybe you know a little bit of SEO, or you have an agency that you've worked with or a marketer in-house, content sprint. So you're developing a bunch of content, maybe in a specific practice area, kind of like what Kayla was saying, and develop those pages out, blog topics, FAQs. We launched that all at the same time. And so that it kind of puts you on a better trajectory to perform in that area versus if you did one per month. And usually our client with us, they have a budget. So they can only spend this per month. You can do one per month. And it's kind of a slow burn if you have a small budget. We've had a lot of success with clients, maybe a project up front with a smaller budget per month. They're comfortable. We get a good out the gate, trajectory and much better success than if we just did one piece per month for a year or two. So something to think about. If you're already working with someone that you want to stay with, do they do content sprints? Have they ever recommended one? That's something you should look into for sure.
Mm-hmm. And Kevin, if I could add something there too, to the content sprint, something you mentioned, whenever you're writing content, whether it's a blog post, whether you're rewriting some of your practice area pages, etc., anytime you're writing content, you want to make sure that you do that with some data behind it. So at Array Digital, what we always make sure to do is we have our SEO team sit down with all of our new clients and run an audit of their site. It's a forensic website audit, goes through your entire site, scans everything, and then they go through and they assign actions, technical actions, content actions for every single page. And we do that manually because we want to make sure that we do it correctly. And then from there, what they have identified that needs remediation in that audit is then transferred over into a content strategy. And then that content strategy is walked through with the client. It's just me and the client on the call, and we say, here's the content strategy. Here's what we suggest. Do you have any edits? Is there anything that you don't want? And we go through and we get their suggestions. Once we finalize that strategy, we make a content calendar, and that shows our clients a view, a landscape of when we are going to write content. And so they never have to guess from month to month what we're doing for them. And as well as we have a fantastic team of communicators who they're able to really just tell our clients, here's what you can expect this month. And really just kind of keeping our clients updated, having performance reviews frequently, having content workshops frequently. But anytime you write content, I see this so often, make sure there is data and a strategy behind it, or else you're just writing content that isn't going to go anywhere. It's not going to be found. So just make sure that you put in that effort, or whoever you've hired, whatever agency you're working with, make sure that they've done that for you. And if they haven't, that's certainly a red flag that you would like to, or you want to be aware of. Can't make any decisions without data. But I see it all the time. So
I saw
really
this morning, actually. I was talking to a client this morning. We don't do SEO for, we just do the website. And just talking to them about what they can do for themselves, or if they want to use us. So just different, kind of this different opportunities. And, but I'll leave with this. One thing, you as the attorney shouldn't be the data source. I think we should write this piece. And that happens a lot, where you as the attorney think, oh, we should write this piece because maybe you care about that topic, or maybe you just had a case that that you're like, oh, I got something new I can put out because of a case I just had. But is anyone searching for it? What's the title? What is the focus? What's the goal? Is there any search volume? So this is what Kayla is saying. Like, you need to have data. Just because you're excited about it doesn't mean it's going to do anything for your business. So I think it's great to hear the thought from the attorney. I think this would work, or my clients always ask me the same question. That's good information. But now let's back it up with data and say, well, close, but here's what we should actually write and how we should write it. And that kills two birds with one stone. We got the answer to this question we always get asked, but we did it in a way that's going to drive new business for you. So I was talking to a client this morning, and they're like, we love writing. We write a couple blogs a month. And I was like, if you hire us, we'll help it. If you don't hire us, please at least do these few things, because you're just writing what you want to write, but you're not moving the ball forward. So, with a little bit of guidance, which I gave them this morning, they'll at least have a better chance, right, of putting out better content and Google accepting it. So yeah, if you love writing, that's great. Back it up with some data, get some help. It doesn't have to be ongoing help, and maybe it's just a consultation or ask us for help. We're happy to point in the right direction. But don't just blindly write stuff.
Yeah, and have some structure to it as well. We have clients who do both. We have two main offerings where we do co-create content with our clients, where we provide them all of the SEO research and the outline, and here are all the kind of secondary terms that you need to include in the piece. And then they're able to write it with all of the guidance that we provide them. And then that makes sure that we have what we need for the piece to perform well, but it also captures their voice and their normal tone of writing. So if they are super interesting in the way that they talk, or they're very specific about their brand, those are opportunities, and that kind of program allows them to still have control over the content writing aspect while making sure that they have everything that they need to perform. For other attorneys, they may say, hey, I'm too busy, or hey, I don't really like writing. I want y'all to write it for me. In that instance, we would do all of the research internally, meet with them, workshop that research, get a transcript, and that transcript that is guided by our research then guides the final piece. So it really helps to sculpt the final piece in the content in any capacity, whether you do co-create, whether you do full service content with us. We make sure to make our clients have content that speaks to them as well as speaks to their potential clients. So you don't want to write content that doesn't have a purpose. And at Array, we make sure that doesn't happen, regardless of your budget or regardless of what plan you have.
Yeah, everything has a place, right? And so there's a strategy for every piece. There's an overall strategy. You might have an ad strategy. There's all these things have to work together. And I think the cool thing about if you have a content calendar and a plan, a strategy for the whole year, that allows you as the owner to make adjustments if needed, right? Hey, I see in 6 months we're going to start doing family law pieces. We've actually had a change. We don't want more family law cases. We're kind of maxed out. So we want more DUI. Whatever it may be, right? You should be able to have a view out as an owner or an attorney to say, hey, I know what we're doing, so now I can make adjustments based on where my firm's actually at. And so you mentioned a client you talked to today. He's used us to surgically build out different practice areas with content sprints, basically. And so we can say, hey, where do you want to grow? He'll be like, here. And then we just go do it for him. And now he does this all the time. So he's basically saying, okay, where do I want to grow my firm? I know I can set Kayla's team on it, and we're going to grow over there. So just one way to do it. Just like if you're launching a Google Ads campaign and putting money behind it, we do the same thing with organic. And organic and content, higher quality clients, ones that do the research, they've done their homework, definitely higher quality of a client. And we love Google Ads, we do that too, but you want to be hitting people from different angles and having that content, because they might click on a Google ad and then you don't have any of this content, or it's thin content, or it's not your voice, and they just don't end up going with you. You need to have that depth of knowledge there.
Absolutely. Another thing that I will say with content production, it's not just starting the content, doing the research, and handing it off to the client. It doesn't stop at the deliverable. What we also do internally is we keep a writing rule set for every single one of our clients. And basically, that writing rule set informs not just the content team, but really anybody who needs to use it at Array. It says, here are all the things that we should either stress or not talk about going forward. So a good example of this, for a lot of attorneys, depending on state, but for a lot of attorneys who are in family law, they'll want divorce cases. However, uncontested divorces may not make them a lot of money. They may not want to spend their time on it or just allocate resources to it for now. So they may say, I understand that typically for a piece that is talking about divorce to perform, we need to talk about uncontested divorces, but like, I don't want any of that on my website. I don't do that at my practice. I don't want to talk about it. What we'll do internally is keep this long, cumulative running list to make sure that we are not discussing anything that you don't want to mention as a lawyer. And this is just a running list that we have of all of the feedback for the content that we've gotten. And that way we're not making any errors continuously in your content or kind of talking about things that don't apply to you. And that's something that I've found when I tell attorneys that, it kind of blows their mind a little bit. And I'm like, this should be something that everyone does for you, right? I don't want to write content that's not going to be helpful for your firm. So if you're spending the time to review the content and leave some feedback here and there, I need to make sure that I'm receptive to that and take action on it. And so every single person in the content department here makes sure that any client that they're working with, they know inside and out what their goals are. And then any feedback that they receive, they make a note of it.
Yeah, no, that's been huge for us because obviously as an agency, managing clients and relationships, and there's a lot of dynamics there, but how does this client want to be communicated to? And they never want us to text them. What if we just did it every other month and didn't ever learn from that, right? So I think it's great to have that. And as we learn what they like, don't like, we make sure we don't do it, and it makes things a lot more smooth. Clients become more comfortable with the content. And things become faster, right? We can pump out more content, less involvement from them, honestly, which is good for them, right? So we don't want to take up much of our attorney's time if we can help it. But there should be involvement. If you're working with an agency and you don't have a clue what you're writing or what they're writing, what the schedule is, you've never reviewed it, you've never done anything like that, that's a problem. And that happens all the time. I talk to attorneys all the time. What's your content strategy? I don't know what that is. What pieces are they writing right now for the next few months? I don't know. When's the last time we reviewed and approved a blog post or a content piece? I never have, So it's like, okay, well, obviously you're not following ABA laws or rules, and it's probably not got your voice and your brand captured for sure. And so it just seems like, some people just don't care or don't know it's a problem. But if you want to win at this game, again, Google needs the attorneys need to be involved to some degree for this to work out.
Right. Absolutely. And I will say if you want to be super, super hands-off with your marketing, SEO/content, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, especially the content portion, because at least at Array, I'm not writing content that I don't feel helps the attorney, or I'm not going to write content that feels dishonest to their brand. So everything I write, I want the attorney to have eyes on it. And if they don't have the time to allocate to that, that is okay. But it would probably best serve them to do something like ads that can be a little bit less hands-off. I want to help as many attorneys as I can, and that involves me speaking to them regularly and getting their feedback. Kevin, something that you just mentioned is we talk a lot to attorneys who are kind of looking for a new solution, looking for a better solution. And you said it, hit the nail right on the head, that we'll ask them, what is your content strategy? What is the line item that you're getting for content? And they'll say, my contract just says content. I don't really know what that means. And so you should know exactly what you're getting. And we make that very, very transparent at Array. You're not going to be guessing what you're getting, how often you're getting it. And I'm not doing this to make $1 million myself each year. Like, I spend a lot of time making sure that this content is really just out of the park for my clients. Like, I can compare it to their old content and say that this is miles better than what they were getting. And they will say that as well. We have tons of very happy attorneys who love working with the content team here. And it just that knowing and that transparency of knowing what they'll be getting is just such a breath of fresh air for a lot of attorneys. And you see it all over their face. But when they're in the moment and haven't come to us yet, you'll see a little bit of worry on their face about, what have I been paying for? Because that's an investment. Like, digital marketing is not cheap by any means. That is something that you are investing in and you expect and should expect to see long-term gain. And so if you don't know what you should be getting, that's certainly a red flag. And you want to remediate that as soon as possible. So whether you're with someone like Array Digital or you're at a different agency, I tell attorneys all the time, just ask questions. If you don't know what you're supposed to be getting or you don't know what this line item is, you don't know where your content strategy is, just ask. And if you have a hard time getting to a strategist or your strategist that you should have all the time, it shouldn't be changing. You shouldn't be thrown around to different people. If you're having a hard time getting in touch with them, that's an issue. Or if you're having a hard time getting answers for them or from them rather, that is also an issue. So very incredibly important that you know everything from top to bottom of your content plan.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, I just see it all the time. And, I think it's an education thing, and attorneys, I talk to some attorneys like, I want leads tomorrow and I don't really care about all this stuff. And, that's great. They might not be a good fit, or you just do ads or something hands off, like you said. But for me as a business owner and dialed into that world, and this podcast is a business podcast more so than it is a law podcast. So, or even a marketing podcast. It's about business. It's about running businesses. And so most of the attorneys I know that are listening right now that I have a lot of friendships with are dialed into their business. They're more into the business than they are being a lawyer. And so I'll say to those that are listening that are like that is, how, it's exciting when you're like, I read this book, or we do this system, and we run on EOS, or they're excited about the things they've done to build their firm. And one of the things you might be lacking is, do you have a content strategy? Do you understand your SEO strategy? Are you part of that and have an understanding of it? Or is it just something that you just hope is getting done properly? So if you want to impress your lawyer owner friends, get your hands around this. But it's more importantly to grow your firm properly and have a handle on it is super important. And it shouldn't be something, again, that you're just not educated on. You have no clue what's going on. That's a problem. So maybe not understanding what your core values are, or not having a hiring process, or all the things that you need to work on. This should be one of them for sure. Mm-hmm. So
yes, yeah,
you're all in trouble. You're all in trouble.
We see it all the time for sure.
And I know attorneys that have it dialed in, and they know the numbers, and know that everything that they're doing. It's few and far between that are really dialed in and part of the process. And I'm not saying if you're an owner of a big firm that you have to be involved to this degree, but you should have attorneys on your staff that are part of the writing, that are working with a team to do this properly. So it doesn't have to be you necessarily, but there should be attorneys involved, and they should be the authors of the content. So, and that's a good segue. Do we want to talk about EAT? Or what do you want to talk about next, Kayla?
Yeah, let's talk about EAT. So EAT, if you are not familiar, stands for it's E-E-A-T. So 2 E's in there, and that stands for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And this is basically a collection of algorithms and kind of ranking information that Google uses to really understand if the content that is on your website, as I mentioned earlier, is coming from an expert in your field. So this is especially pertinent for industries or websites that fall under the Your Money, Your Life, YMYL category. And that usually is the main 3 is financial, medical, and legal. But it can include some others from time to time, but that's usually the main 3 that you will hear. And any industry that is in the Your Money, Your Life category has a greater responsibility to publish helpful content to consumers, because if the content is not helpful, if it's inaccurate, then, or outdated even, then that can pose a severe financial or physical risk to the people who are consuming that information. And of course, Google does not want to be held liable. So there's already been some legal complications with Google having their featured snippets in the past that may present some information that's not up to date or not necessarily helpful. So these are things that you just really want to make sure you're aware of. And as an attorney, I can give you some tips right now of how to do this. So the first thing is you want to make sure that you have authorship on your website. So authorship is usually where you have a blog post, and then at the very end of that blog post, it'll say, written by Attorney Jane Doe. And it'll have a little snippet of Attorney Jane Doe's bio and then links to maybe LinkedIn, the legal or the law firm's Facebook page, et cetera. And then what that allows Google to do is understand that there's some on-page content here. It should be helpful, and it's written by someone who has the credentials to be speaking about it. Another thing that Google really looks for, and Google actually had some recently leaked documents around a couple months ago in May. And so that really took the SEO community by storm, and we were able to see all the different ranking factors that Google has. And one of them that we've always kind of known, but Google didn't really want to come out about it as much, is recency of the content. So, for example, in Virginia, where one of my clients is, we wanted to go ahead and write a piece on the changing uninsured motorist laws for July 1st of this year. Those are very important laws that people should know. And if there's any content on the website that has outdated legal information, that can be super harmful. So you always want to make sure you're reevaluating the content on your website and ensuring that it is up to date with all of the legal changes that may be happening in your state or states if you practice in multiple. But that is another thing, recency of the content. And then the kind of other last thing that I will say for EAT, and this is also for user experience, is just making sure that all the content on your website is connected in a way that makes a story that kind of speaks to your expertise in general. So a lot of times what we'll see is if there are multiple attorneys at an organization, there will be multiple blogs, and in total, there may be 2 blogs attributed to one person, 5 attributed to another, and 4 attributed to another. Ideally, you want to limit how many authors you have on the website and try to attribute it to maybe just 1 or 2 authors. And then overall, what you can do within that is have content that you speak about something, and then you build out this content that has authors on it that have credibility, and they can kind of speak to this recency. And then if you have content that is speaking to each other, or let's say like you're a personal injury attorney and you have a practice area page on car accidents, and then you have those uninsured motorist laws, the story kind of makes sense if you go from one page that talks about car accidents in general and what you should do per insurance, and then another page that talks about the updated laws, and it's written by the same person. So those are just a few tips that you can have there. There's tons of tips that I always share with lawyers, and feel free to give us a call. We're happy to sit down with you and evaluate your site specifically. But in terms of EAT, there's just a lot of things that you can do there. Video is also very helpful to supplement the content, so we always recommend that. Repurposing the content on things like LinkedIn, certainly do that. So there's just various kind of different tactics that you can use, but those are kind of the main things there that we always like to make sure that we get down first and foremost.
Oh yeah, I mean, just looking at the content we have and what we do, and now looking at other websites and comparing it, there's so many things that are new to me that we didn't even have 6 months ago. Different ways we're giving data and information to Google to show that expertise, but also it helps with the potential client on the page get the information they need along their journey. So, but it's surprising how many things I see that are not being done elsewhere, and most sites aren't keeping up with it. And I think that kind of goes back to what Kayla was saying. Like when you write a piece, this is anyone out there, you write a piece, here's what typically happens. You post it, done. You never look at it again. You don't track it. You don't change it. It's done. It's like a social media post. I posted it, it's done. It's just in my feed somewhere. It might pop up a few years later as a memory, but you want to be tracking every single piece and seeing how it's performing, and that should be updated or something should be happening with it periodically. Is it, probably not going to perform to the top. It might go a pretty good distance and then stop. Okay, how do we get that from page 2 to page 1? And what changes should we make to that content? Do we add new content? And then as we learn these new things, like table of contents or other things that we can do to a page, have you added that to all those old pieces that you have that may perform well, but now it can do better? So it's this constant, like, not just once and done, but it's a constant, like, recycle and reevaluate. And we do these forensic audits on an annual basis to go and say, okay, how are we done? What can we improve? Let's go back and look at what we did. And so it's just a constant. There should be no set it and forget it type of things happening.
Right. And along the lines of EAT as well, having client testimonials, having stories, things that speak to, because the predicament that a lot of attorneys get into is that they cannot say that they're the expert or they cannot say that they're the best lawyer ever. But there are a lot of people that will leave a Google review for you. And if you wanted to kind of feature that Google review on your website and make sure it's obvious that it's a review, but if you want to be able to feature that and have those testimonials and those client stories, then that directly feeds into EAT and building trust and establishing, especially with like first person pronoun usage, to say, I was able to help this particular person with their case. Being able to say things like that, Google's algorithm really appreciates and really recognizes. So you want to do that as much as possible.
Well, it's like you can't say you're the best as an attorney, but others can. So, let's see what others are saying. And that, as a consumer or someone that would hire an attorney for different purposes, we look at reviews. Like we're going to a restaurant or we're buying a product, or if we're using a company to do work at our house, like we always look at reviews. And so super important. And people like to see what other people have said, and they use that in their buying decision. So, definitely a huge piece there. So, well, I wanted to make sure we crammed in a little bit extra here at the end, Kayla, and talk about AI content for this episode.
That requires
and that could be a whole episode by itself, but
Yes. Yeah, for sure. We're starting to see that quite often as more attorneys come to us saying, why is my traffic not only stagnant, but plummeting? So the important thing to recognize is, yes, you can create content with AI, but so is everybody else, right? So if you are using AI to kind of regurgitate the statutes and say them ever so slightly different, you have to keep in mind how many other attorneys may be doing that as well. You're not really optimizing that content that well if you're just putting in a prompt saying, write me a 500-word piece, 700-word piece on XYZ topic, taking that and putting it on your site, which attorneys typically don't do that, but the agencies that they hire, which is what we've been seeing, are doing that for them without telling them, which is incredibly dishonest, but it's happening more and more. And now what we're even seeing is we're starting to see these law firms that have this AI content, the traffic and the organic pages, so how many pages have been published on their website. For a while, there will be a positive correlation. One goes up, so does the other. But there will be a certain point after a while where the organic pages continues to increase and then the traffic begins to plummet. So I'm very excited in our next episode here to really show that data. But overall, we do have lots of internal research that we've been able to share on LinkedIn and on our website that really show a lot of the legal implications of relying on AI to write content or even do your SEO strategy. There's been a lot of attorneys who have faced repercussions, and I can think of 6 examples off the top of my head. We won't go into it right now. That'll be shared for a later date. But be very cautious. Do it very sparingly and understand that something like this is a commodity. Using AI content is a commodity. So if it's easy for you to churn out, it's easy for others to churn out. And so are you feeding into that uniqueness and experience that Google wants to see? Likely not. And when we start to see that AI content isn't performing well, it's usually right in Q4 of last year when the helpful content update rolled out. So most people will start to see the hit around November-ish of last year, but that can go all the way until March. Recently, there was another core update in March that really solidified that helpful content update. And we're starting to see even more sites, not even just lose traffic, but be completely unlisted entirely from Google search because that content is seen as spammy by Google. So Google has changed its stance multiple times over the past year. It said, okay, AI content, absolutely not. And then it changed its stance and said, if the AI content is helpful, we don't care how it's made, that's fine. And now it is almost reverted its stance without saying it's reverted its stance, and it's punishing sites that are relying heavily on that AI content. So my advice, while we're in this whole kind of AI content revolution here, is to make content that is from you, as cheesy as it may sound, is from your heart, that speaks about your brand and that really speaks to clients, because content that you've spent time on and put effort into is going to be able to ride out all of the waves of Google changing its mind and all of these different AI tools coming out. So just spend time on it. Do not try to find the easy way out. Put in quality, and then you'll get the quality leads. Put in and get out quality. That's the goal here. So we'll talk about that in depth a little bit more later on.
No, I love it. And I'll add this. Imagine if, for one, you're talking about your firm that you own, right? And you want to carry yourself a certain way. So imagine all the content's not written by a human and it's just grabbed from here and there. So would you want to put that out? So let's just forget about producing content just to rank. That's one goal. But just take the other side of it. Imagine if Forbes reached out and said, hey, we want you to write an article, Mr. Lawyer, and we're going to feature it. Would you use AI to just make it for you? You know, would you want that to be on your authorship at the bottom, written by Kevin Daisy, and use ChatGPT, write it and submit it to them? So just think about that. You know, your content out there, people are reading. We're not tricking Google to just get traffic and they click sign up and become a client. Like, they're reading this content. So just think about it that way. And hopefully that'll scare you enough to say, you know what, we probably need to get a better handle on our content and who's in charge of it, who's reviewing it. Does it represent our brand and our firm and how we approach things? And does it attract or detract the right kinds of clients based on what it says and how it's worded? You know, we got clients who are like, oh, we're really high-end clients over here, or I want pro bono clients because we've done well. Two different types of strategies there. But how the content's written, how your website looks, is going to attract some people to convert and others not to. And so your content plays a huge part in that as well. So another way to think about it, if you take Google results out of it, would you want that content to represent you and your brand? I'll leave you with
Absolutely. I think you summed it up perfectly. Yeah, AI can only get you so far. Put the work in. You wouldn't want to do your cases all with AI, and I'm sure your clients wouldn't want to know that their attorney is using AI to work on their case and they didn't do their diligence or spend any time really evaluating their case and getting the details and fighting for them. So just think about it in the same way.
Yeah, same. Yeah, exactly. If you're a law firm, can you benefit from AI and can you automate some things? And your clients don't care about that. But at the end of the day, they want to make sure there's an attorney doing the work and showing up for them and fighting for them and doing the right thing. So, same thing you'd feel about, hey, let's just replace the attorney with AI. What do we need an attorney for? Well, that doesn't sound very good, does it? So that's kind of how we feel about content. So,
Absolutely.
Well, Kayla, anything else we want to throw into this episode? I know we'll be doing a few more coming up here. There's lots to cover with the content.
So I think the last thing that I will say here is make sure that you are checking out Kevin on LinkedIn. A lot of the information. I do those abstracts for you, Kevin. I think you're using them on LinkedIn. A lot of the information that we have, whether it pertains to, as we just talked about, AI content or tips to really do a lot of this SEO groundwork yourself before committing to an agency, things that we just genuinely find helpful. You can find that on our blog. This is array.com is our website, and kind of just go through there. We have tons of resources, and you can keep up with Kevin on social media and see a lot of the kind of summaries of the blogs that we will be doing on our site. And then finally, be able to tune in to these episodes so that you can get even more tips from us. Just at the end of the day, like, we genuinely want to help as many people as we can. And we truly believe that an educated client is a helpful client. So help us help you. And the way that we can do that is to make sure that you understand why we're doing what we're doing. And if we keep that in the dark, then it doesn't really help anyone. So if we can put out a lot of that preliminary information already, and then you come to us having done your research and having an educated decision on why you want to work with us, that's fantastic for our long-term relationship. So definitely stay tuned to what we're doing soon. And I'm excited to talk about some more interesting topics in our next episodes. We'll be doing kind of an FAQ episode of things that we hear a lot from attorneys. So if y'all do have any questions, feel free to leave them, and we might be able to answer that in an upcoming episode as well.
Yeah, Kayla, I appreciate it so much. Thanks for joining me today. And yeah, everyone, got questions, always ping me, LinkedIn. I'll respond. I don't have any bots or automation. So yeah, ask any questions you got. We may feature it in one of our Tactical Tuesday episodes. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everyone.